tobacco is a funny thing in Canada, and the challenge that the tobacco industry has is that out of any form of smoking, cigars is probably the healthiest. It seems kind of odd, right? But typical cigar smokers don't inhale their smoke. So it's not an inhalation thing. It's a flavor thing. It's a new, like, you hear people talk about cigars and they'll say, well, there's hints of cedar and, dark cherries. There's the adjectives that people use to describe cigars are very similar as wine, same as wine culture or coffee culture, right? In the premium products, there's not a stitch of chemicals. Even the glue they use for the cigars is a vegetable-based glue. Yeah, so it's all natural. Unfortunately, cigars get wrapped up with cigarettes and vapes, and they couldn't be more different.
We've talked about business. Now let's talk about pleasure in terms of like stick premium cigars, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you kind of turn that into a business?
I mean, I used to go into that store. There was an existing store. It had been in business for probably 25 years. And when I lived in New Westminster, I used to go there and pick up some cigars from Jay. And he always had one type of cigar that I enjoyed, and so I would go see him. And I happened to be in there one day and buying a couple of cigars, and I just said, "Hey, have you ever considered selling your business?" And his eyes got all wide, and he said, "Oh, I'll get my son to call you." And so we started talking about taking the business over. I was just asking a question, like I didn't have the intention of buying his business. I just wanted to know if if he had been, if someone had come to him and wanted to buy it. And anyway, it started off some conversations, and I got more and more interested because I really love cigars. I'm really passionate about them, and so we talked, and we came to an agreement. Eventually, it was like, okay, we're buying the company.
Right. Do you manufacture the cigars? Is that correct? Okay.
No. We buy them. We buy them from a distributor. So the distributor brings them in. Distributor brings them from Cuba, Nicaragua, Honduras, wherever, and then they warehouse them. They are also the tax collection agent for the federal government. So when we buy the cigars, we pay the distributor to take our taxes. They take our taxes and remit to the Canadian government. So we're not allowed to buy anything direct from any factories that we find. If I find a cool factory in Nicaragua, I can't just go down there and buy a bunch of cigars and say, hey, I want to stock my shop up.
Okay, actually, maybe it's better to. I want to try and understand that, because I'm going to let you into my only understanding of sourcing and supply is just one time I looked into buying stuff on Alibaba.
Oh yeah.
And I can't even remember what it was, but clearly this is not the way that works, right? So I wanted to kind of understand, obviously you just said you can't buy stuff, but from you can't go to a random country in Central America or wherever to just get this product. But how then do you approach branding and customizing your product towards catering, actually curating an experience for your customers?
So after we bought while we were going through the process of buying the business, our ideas started to come out, and we started to visualize kind of what the shop was going to look like. The shop, having been there for, again, Jay owned it for 23 years, I think. It was dilapidated. It was run down. It was, a little dirty. It had a lot of junk laying around. Like a lot of businesses, 20-year-old businesses, they just collect stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so our vision was to create a place where people can come and relax, no pressure. Talk about cigars and cigar culture. Tell stories, whatever. But have an area. We've got an espresso machine, so you can make an espresso if you want to, and go sit down on the couch and hang out and talk. That's the vision that we had is a comfortable, professional, high end type feel to the store. And our focus is to go after and do business with people that want premium products, right? Premium cigars. So premium cigars would be anything in between, let's say, 25 and $100, right? Those are your premium price levels. And so, that's our focus. That's it, right? We've got some pipes that we do a little bit of business with, but it's not our focus. We want to be a high end, premium tobacco shop, and just create a nice atmosphere for people to come in and shop and experience the culture.
Yeah, so cigars have been around since, at least in North America, since the 1400s or something like that, right? What is it about like cigars what is the draw of cigars? I mean, you're a cigar connoisseur, so I can ask you this.
Tobacco is a funny thing in Canada. Tobacco is frowned upon, right? It's a real bad thing. And the challenge that the tobacco industry has is that out of any form of smoking, cigars is probably the healthiest. It seems kind of odd, right? But typical cigar smokers don't inhale their smoke. So it's not an inhalation thing. It's a flavor thing. It's the new, like, you hear people talk about cigars and they'll say, well, there's hints of cedar and cocoa and straw and dark cherries, or there's the adjectives that people use to describe cigars are they're similar as wine, same as wine culture,
Right.
or coffee culture, right? It's like you start to describe the stuff as very specific flavors, and so that's what I think tobacco is all about is just the flavors, right? And so it's all natural. There's no chemicals in those things, right? In the premium products, there's not a stitch of chemicals. Even the glue they use for the cigars is a vegetable based glue. Yeah, so it's all natural, and it's unfortunately that cigars get wrapped up with cigarettes and vapes, and they couldn't be more different.
Yeah, so I'm actually curious about that. I don't know. Obviously, this might be an ignorant question. But what's the difference in terms of material between a cigar and a cigarette?
I don't know the technical, what the differences would be where it slides into a cigar or not. That's a really good question. I know that when I think of cigarette, I think of hydrogen cyanide and what the hell's the embalming fluid? They put them in cigars. That's when I think of or cigarettes. That's when I think of cigarettes. That's what I think of is chemicals and it could be a size thing. Actually, I don't know. I'm not sure. That's a good question.
Right. Because what I wanted to get at is obviously you described the cigars because it's so natural and there's minimal processing. That's what makes it better than a cigarette. Yeah, I was looking to kind of get a sense of what kind of processing has gone into making a cigarette.
Yeah, that I don't have any idea on.
Yeah. So, but obviously, the reason why people like cigars is for the flavor is just I guess it's similar to like a shisha or something in that way, right? Obviously, as there are different people there's obviously people crave different flavors to
Hmm.
their cigars as well, right? And I assume that that has impact on where you can source the tobacco from and stuff like that, right?
Hmm. There's probably there's a lot. I'll call it three main regions, I guess, for tobacco, which would be Cuba, Nicaragua, and the Dominican. Right, those are
Right,
probably the three
right,
biggest. Cuban cigars, in my experience, and I haven't been a big Cuban guy. I mean, I enjoy Cuban cigars, but I don't smoke them a lot.
right.
Cubans tend to be, in my experience, kind of cream forward type cigars.
Yeah,
And so, there's cream with some spice, or there's some cream with some chocolate, or there's cream, like there's the kind of the base flavor is cream. I've always experienced for the most part.
right,
The Nicaraguan products and the Dominican products, they have Nicaraguan especially. They for me they have a huge expanse of flavors
mm,
in their different tobaccos.
right,
Yeah, you can go from, I mean, anything if you want. You want spicy and cocoa. You go to this one. If you want cream and you want black currants, you go to that one. If you like chocolate, dark chocolate, you go to this one. And I find that the Nicaraguan products really have that that many variations in flavor.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna put you a bit on the spot here, because it's like, if you could smoke one cigar for one flavor of cigar for the rest of your life, which would it be?
From a region or a particular cigar?
A particular cigar.
Oh, that's a hard one. So it's interesting. Like I said, I don't smoke a lot of Cuban cigars, but there's one that I've had, that I still have, actually a few of them, that they are yeah, they're so good. They're called Cohiba Behike
I've heard of
54.
those. Yeah, I've heard of those.
Yeah, yeah. Cohiba is like the Ferrari of the cigar industry, right?
I see. I see.
Cohiba is what everybody really wants, right? That's
Right.
the standard, I guess.
Yeah.
So that is probably the best cigar that I've ever had in my life,
Right.
was that the Behike 54. It was so good, and that's a really high end product, right? Now Behikes, now if you go into a shop in Canada, if you can even find them, because Cuba's having a real bad supply challenge right now.
Right.
If you can even find them, I would think they're probably $200 to $250 per
Whoa.
cigar.
Obviously, you mentioned like you mentioned the price point there, up to a point where someone is paying $250 for a cigar, and that shows clearly that people value these cigars. And
Yeah,
I've often seen, I don't know if you watch the NBA, but once the team wins the finals, they break out the cigars,
yeah,
and
yeah.
the cigar culture seems to have, I don't know when it started getting associated with like celebration and success and a certain
Mm.
status. But how do you speak to kind of the cigar culture and just sort of that association?
Well, I think what we're seeing is there's less celebratory purchases, I think,
Right,
and more, weekly or daily smoking activity going on.
right,
Uh, I think that people that smoke cigars are very passionate about the cigars.
right,
There's a lot of passion. There's a lot of passion in that industry, and so there's a lot of people that smoke, smoke daily, multiple daily.
right,
I mean, there's lots, and you talk about a $250 cigar. It's a lot of money, no question. However, the prestige of that cigar, will drive individuals to spend that kind of money. And let's be honest. I mean, in even anywhere in Western culture, I think. There's lots of people with lots of money, right? $250 for a stick. Yeah, whatever, right?
Yeah.
There's people there's people that'll go over to some of the old world cigar stores in Europe and buy, $3,000, $5,000 cigars that that have been around for that have been around for like 100 years, right? Like an actual 100-year-old cigar.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. There's people that'll pay big money for that stuff, right? And so it's it's not necessarily just a celebratory thing. It's a culture, right?
Obviously, there's been a seismic, not seismic. It's been a gradual shift where the government is trying to push people, trying to educate people on like the potential health implications of smoking and all of that. And that has, of course, meant that a lot of people have shifted towards tobacco alternatives,
Right.
or at least different ways of getting their tobacco in, such as like vaping and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I wonder how you assess that shift, and if obviously yours maybe it doesn't impact business as much in your stratosphere, just because like there's you cater to a specific customer, a specific need. But I think I'd like to get your opinion on sort of the entry of vapes into the space.
Yeah, my thought on vapes, I believe they're, in essence, the flavors that are available, they're targeting children. Like I can't get past that. It's all flavored strawberries, watermelon flavor, popcorn, whatever. It's not. It's marketed to young people and to get them involved at an early age, right? The separation between vaping and cigarettes and cigars is just massive. Like, you talk about the health concerns about tobacco. Are there health concerns? Sure, right? Is smoking anything good for you? Probably not.
Right.
But what does the government do currently to inform its citizens of the harmful effects of alcohol? Nothing. They don't talk about the harmful effects of alcohol. Through the COVID shutdowns, the lockdowns, you could sure go out and get a bottle of booze, no problem, from 9 a.m. till 11 p.m. every day, right? They shut everything else down, but boy, you could go to the liquor store and get your bottle of booze, right? And so, there's lots of things that we do that are not healthy, that we consume or that we smoke or we drink. In my opinion, to enjoy a cigar a day is not that risky, as opposed to if you were to drink, a glass of wine a day, or the effects of alcohol are far worse on multiple systems in our bodies,
right,
than a cigar. Yeah.
Right. So, but clearly, vaping is quite popular now, and a lot of people perceive it as being less harmful. I know, and unfortunately, there's not enough studies to prove whether that is true or not. In this moment, but what is your assessment?
Listen, if somebody wants to take in nicotine through vapes, okay. I think that the government has stepped in and cut out some of the damaging chemicals that maybe early vape cartridges had in them. Talk about popcorn lung and some other the bad stuff that can happen. And listen, I've got friends of mine that don't want to smoke cigarettes, and they have a vape, and they've got it dialed. It's like 1 gram per tube or whatever they buy it as. 1 gram of nicotine. There's barely any nicotine in it at all, and they puff on it once in a while through the day. I don't have a problem with it. It's it's all personal choice, and it just like I don't want to be our company or our store. We don't want to be anywhere near that product. There's no vape culture. Right? There's no cigarette culture, right?
There's no culture to it. It's not the same. Yeah. No, I see what you mean there. I was talking to a kid a little while ago, and a lot of people assume that vaping helps you quit smoking, or at least helps you reduce your nicotine consumption. But what was truly a surprise to me was this kid basically said, "I don't get the hit that I want out of this because the nicotine content is so low." So people are now able to obtain supplies. I don't know through what means because I'm not familiar with that world, but they're able to obtain supplies of ultra high nicotine content cartridges, and so they're vaping healthier, but now they're still stuck on this same like nicotine load. Which is kind of crazy that the system allows that or does not. I'm not, as I said, I don't know, but like especially in the hands of kids too, it's a bit strange.
Yeah, it is. I think that the vape stuff is more targeted towards young kids, children, and young adults.
Yeah.
As a cool smoking alternative. Right, than the non-smoke smoking, right?
Right.
I don't know. Hey, listen, and I don't judge anybody for that. If they want to suck on a vape pen, and that makes them feel happy, cool. I don't have a problem with that. I don't judge anybody. It's for me and our company, our store, yeah, that's not part of our passion, right? So, nicotine is, I used to smoke cigarettes. I smoked cigarettes for, I don't know, 20 years or something.
Okay.
And it's a challenge to stop. It is really hard. And it's not just the nicotine portion of it. It's the movements and the
habits you form around
it,
right?
Yeah, you like for me, it was I'd light a smoke up as soon as I got in my truck. I'd fire up my truck, roll the window down, and light a smoke, right?
Yeah.
Automatically. Yeah. And or after dinner, I'd have finished my dinner and I'd step outside and I'd have a smoke, right? Yeah. Or my first coffee of the day, had to have a cigarette, right? And so there's those triggers, right? That smokers go through, and so that's another hurdle for someone who's stopping to get over, right? Having that in your fingers all the time, and that's another challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but if someone wanted to stop smoking, and I'm asking that because obviously you've gone through this process of cigarettes at least. What would you say is the most effective method or tactic that they can use?
You may be asking that question to the wrong guy, and I'll tell you why. I stopped smoking. It must have been 16 years ago or so now, and I also I think 6 years ago I stopped drinking. And both of those things, I quit cold turkey. I stopped cold turkey. That's the last time I'm ever going to have a cigarette, and that's the last time I'm ever going to have a drink of alcohol. And so my good friend who was involved in AA a lot, he said that he doesn't tell my story when it comes to the alcohol.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to imitate for sure.
He calls me the unicorn.
Yeah.
Right? My advice to people if they want to stop that stuff is just stop. Right? And maybe it's easy for me. However, if we make a decision and we have conviction, right, and determination to do it,
Yeah.
Anybody can do it. That's what it takes. And being true to ourselves and telling ourselves that, like, not lying to ourselves, not giving ourselves an easy out, right? Just stop. And for me, again, like I'm that type of individual where if I'm doing something, or I'm not doing it, I ain't doing it, and that's it. That's my decision. That's what I've come up with, and that's the way it's going to be.
Interesting.
That's just my thought process on it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, from cigars, there's another substance that obviously there's a culture around, especially here in BC where we live,
Yeah.
which is marijuana, right?
Mm-hmm.
We live in a world now where marijuana is legal and is sold, every 2 streets or whatever it is here in BC, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder how you kind of assess the legalization, the efficacy, the effectiveness of like legalization in terms of what the government was seeking to do by doing that, and just where we are right now, what, 5, almost 7 years down the line or something from legalization. Was that a good decision?
I think in my perfect world, people would have access to marijuana and cannabis and mushrooms, and they wouldn't have access to alcohol. And the reason I say that is nobody kills somebody in a bar fight after smoking a joint. Nobody smokes a joint, goes home and beats their wife. People don't get violent and lose all of their morals, right, and beliefs when they're smoking weed. It just doesn't happen. But you get people that drink alcohol that do all kinds of crazy shit and bad stuff. Really bad stuff. And so, I personally, I'm all for, legalization of cannabis. I think it's, cannabis has been in the world for centuries, and it was touted as a really terrible gateway drug at one point, where they did, the tests on chimpanzees. And there was a commercial back in the 50s or something that they showed, the effects of smoking marijuana on chimpanzees. Well, what I've found is that there was brain damage in the chimpanzees because they didn't give them any oxygen when they were giving them the smoke. They got 100% smoke for 2 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever that was. So they basically deprived them of oxygen, causing brain damage.
Right.
That was how the researchers framed it, right? And anyway, so I'm a firm believer that that cannabis is a good thing. I don't think it's bad at all. Again, the alcohol is a family wrecker. It's a business wrecker. It does all kinds of really bad things for people that are addicted to it.
You spoke about marijuana being a gateway drug, or being perceived as a gateway drug earlier, and I was curious: do you believe that to be true or no?
Absolutely. Like, there's no way it's a gateway drug. Like, if somebody goes out, and listen, I've smoked in my lifetime, right? If I smoked a joint, there was never, ever a moment where I thought, maybe a line of cocaine might be kind of cool right now, right? Or I feel pretty good. Maybe I need to, stick a needle in my arm and get some heroin in me, right? It's like, no, that doesn't happen. It's like, pass me a bag of chips and some soda, right? And it's like, that's what happens when you smoke weed. And but when you're drunk, you lose your inhibitions, I guess, or your ability to reason correctly.
Right.
And I think that, yeah, if there is a gateway drug, it's alcohol, because it's, people will do all kinds of crazy shit when they're drinking that they would never do. And so, if you're really drunk and someone says, hey, you want to have a line of Coke, at a party, sure, right? And your inhibitions are down, right? Your guard's down. And all of a sudden you're well, that, you do a line of Coke, it's like, that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do that again, right? And that's your gateway, I feel. But marijuana's always been touted as the bad drug, and it's I think it's probably closer to being medicinal than an actual drug, right?
Yeah, but I guess you spoke also psilocybin is another one there that people are trying to push through to being legal as well.
Yeah.
And obviously, some of the biggest applications that people have explored is maybe like to a street in PTSD and some and depression and some of that stuff.
Yep.
Have you had any experiences with psilocybin that you care to share?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah, I mean, I've played around with it. I mean, I've been around for a long time, and it's not something that I would look to all the time. But I've tried like microdosing before, and
Right.
that was really cool. Actually, it was. I didn't really feel anything other than everything seemed to be a little bit happier. Brighter, a little bit brighter, right? It was like, oh wow, this is really cool, and everything's happy, right?
Yeah.
And I've eaten mushrooms before where I've had a great experience and I've had a bad experience. I mean, as a hallucinogenic, different things can you can experience a lot of different things, right? When you're in it. So I've had good and bad experiences with them, and I've listened to some podcasts and read some information on the health effects for, like you said, PTSD, depression, how the psilocybin sort of creates different neural pathways in your mind, I guess, to help you reason and think differently.
Yeah.
And you know what? If that's what it does, that's super cool. And microdose anybody that needs it. I have people in one of my businesses that they microdose during the day, during work days,
right,
while they're working. It's I think it's pretty normal, and it helps them.
So I think my biggest thing there is I agree with you about the benefits of these drugs, but my biggest thing there is with legalization has come like overexposure, right? You've got people smoking marijuana in public parks. You've got, because it's legal. What are you going to do, right? And for me, my biggest gripe with it is not adults can do whatever they want. Who cares, right? But kids are increasingly being exposed to it, and there is science here to back up the fact that people should not be smoking, too soon, earlier than 21, if you like, because it impacts the way their brains develop. I mean, as alcohol does as well, right? It impacts the way their brains develop and all sorts of things about their development, right? And that's always been my biggest quandary with like full legalization as it is. It's just, kids are being exposed to marijuana too early. They see that stuff around, and I've had people kind of argue the opposite side where, oh, because you see a person do this, you should educate your kids to have a mind of their own. Yeah, but I wonder what you think about like the exposure of, or do you think we're doing a disservice to the next generation by having like such open? I would say it's right now it's open use, right? It's almost
Yeah.
Although recently, to be fair, the government of BC kind of repealed some of those by
Hmm.
banning drug use or I think, yeah, I think even marijuana was included there in public parks, right, and public spaces. But what do you think about raising kids in this world, in this particular world of legal marijuana, for example?
I think that you can't make the distinction between marijuana and alcohol. Alcohol is around our children from a very young age. I think, as parents, we talk about, or we manage our children when it comes to alcohol, right? You will
Right?
not drink until you're of age, right?
Do we ever
And
succeed with that? I don't think so.
no, no, not no. In my case, absolutely not. Right? I think I got drunk for the first time when I was like 12 years old, right? And
Liar.
so yeah, so I mean, no, it doesn't work. But as parents, we're responsible to teach our kids that no, you can't do that till you're 19. There's I think no difference between that and marijuana. You got to have the same messaging. Kids have access to alcohol. They'll have access to marijuana. It's just a matter of we need to manage it properly. And do I want my kids? If I have a youngster, do I want a youngster around some dude in a park that's sitting there smoking on a big fat joint? Yeah, probably not. I don't appreciate it as someone who has had experience with marijuana. I don't appreciate people being in an open space in the center park or even walking down the street smoking a joint because I don't appreciate the smell. Right? I think it's for me. It's a little. I don't know. I don't know. Annoying, maybe.
Right.
But I mean, kids are going to do what kids are going to do, and whether it's alcohol or whether it's marijuana, they're going to they're going to find a source for one of the two or all of them or none of them if they want. Like, yeah, I know that marijuana is bad for developing brains, right? And I think that 21 is kind of the age, right? Well, I mean, what does alcohol do to a developing brain,
Equally,
right?
equally terrible.
Probably, right? And alcohol attacks, different organs as well, right? It's your liver and or kidneys. It goes into it affects your brain. It affects all kinds of systems in your body, right? So,
Right.
I just think it's just a matter of managing that. I've told my kids, listen, I prefer you smoke weed than drink alcohol,
Mm.
right? And my kids are all old enough. They're all 21 and older, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
um, you know, smoke your weed. Don't drink booze. Booze is bad, right? If you want to do something, smoke some weed. You know, that's just my opinion, right?
Right. So, assuming you were maybe a government official or something, how again? Obviously, you just spoke about not appreciating people. I don't know, smoking outside where
Yeah, yeah,
anybody can be exposed to their
yeah.
material. Um, personally, I would say ban smoking in public spaces. You can do that in your house or wherever, in your
Sure.
private gathering or just somewhere that it does not. And that's the problem I have with, I guess, social media in general. People feel like everything needs to be like public. They have to put everything out there. Like, oh, look at me and this big fat joint. It's just like, it's like, it's like, do your thing, man. I don't need to know
you know,
about it. It's like,
we've in our society up until like I don't know 5 years ago maybe.
yeah,
It's been illegal to drink alcohol outside,
yeah,
right? You're allowed to drink alcohol in your own home, right? Um, but not outside. In your yard, sure, but not outside in public. I don't know. I think that's effective. Um, why wouldn't they just carry that forward for marijuana and just say, okay, no smoking in public places? Same as alcohol, right? No drinking in public places. But I think alcohol's changed a little bit, I think, over the last 5 years,
Right.
where they allow it in public spaces now. So,
which is pretty unfortunate. I'd say.
Alcohol's the worst, man. Like when I finally recognized that my relationship with alcohol wasn't that healthy, and I stopped. I never realized it, but it is a bad thing. It's an absolute poison, and it again, it ruins families, lives, businesses. It's a bad thing, right?
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, your opinion of this was that, okay, you don't feel like marijuana is a gateway drug per se,
No.
right?
No.
But and yet, obviously, there's underlying reasons why a lot of people, we're right now living in the midst of an opioid crisis, right? And there are underlying reasons why people choose to engage in risky and riskier drug use, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder what is your assessment, first of all, of the opioid crisis, and what would be your approach to trying to tackle the opioid crisis? And I know this kind of I'm taking you out of the cigar world and pulling you into drug use, but yeah,
it's all good. Yeah, it's all good. I think safe injection sites are, not shouldn't be in our future. I think that, providing drugs to any addict is not acceptable at all. I think it's our responsibility in society to help those people get over the depression that they're fighting with, and the abuse and the addiction. I think that we need to be more involved in helping them get better, not giving them more drugs that are safe, that won't kill them. That's you look at the state of downtown Vancouver or Abbotsford or Kelowna, right? Then just a couple spots in BC. It's disgusting what's going on the streets. It's absolutely horrendous. And most of those people are addicted to some type of harmful drug, heavy drug, right? A coke, a heroin, a meth, I don't know, trank, or I don't know what else is out there. But it's those people don't need clean drugs. Those people need rehabilitation programs and support systems that can help them come back into society. Right. Because a lot of those people, and I've done some help with a couple with one charity in particular, and we used to make bags of sandwiches and toiletries and socks and granola bars and female hygiene products, toothbrushes, and we put them in bags, and we'd send them, we'd take them downtown to the Lower East Side and hand them out. And the number of people that, like, some of the people that I've talked to that are down there, right, telling me, oh, I was an architect. Wow. And and I was successful and this and that. And my kids were, just about to go to university, and I started drinking, and I found heroin, and boom. And I think that, that story isn't uncommon downtown. And so it's, these people, a lot of them, I think, were contributing to society at one point in their lives, and then they just stopped. And so I think it's important for us to step up and support these people. Don't give them more drugs, help them get over the addiction and help them get over the depression. Right? That's just my opinion. I think that giving them more drugs does absolutely nothing for them to support them and helping them helping them change their lives.
Right. Obviously, the approach that the government has, at least my understanding in BC here, is just every drug is decriminalized. And for me, I worry the most about just the exposure. And for me, it's always been about the kids. That's what worries me the most. Because with adults, you're an adult. That's the way it is. But either way, I don't know what could be maybe a more effective way, because what I heard in the news lately was, or sometime recently was, I can't remember which minister it was. Maybe it was the minister of for drugs and addictions here in BC. But I think uh, she said, I'm not sure if she was the one per se, but so I'll confirm that. But that the person said that we were already on our way towards this opioid crisis, and their choice to decriminalize drugs was just an attempt to combat that. And as an alternative, if obviously that has failed, because, in my opinion, that has failed because we are not getting, it's getting worse. We're getting more and more overdoses now, more than ever. So again, I'm just like I've always kind of happened on this conundrum where, okay, you can't decriminalize all drugs. And I appreciate that this is a very abstract question that you may not have an answer to. You can't decriminalize all drugs. You can't as well have open drug use, because then you're potentially, in my opinion, exposing young kids to just seeing things that no kid should be seeing early.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you want to help these people who have fallen on these sort of tough times. So where is the midpoint?
I think that we're from what I've seen and what I'm observing is that we're more concerned about the addicts being comfortable, right? Providing comfort for them, making them feel okay, being comfortable, and stopping the cycle of drug addiction is not comfortable. It's not a comfortable place to put those people in. And they have to want it, but it's not a comfortable place. And I think we need to stop trying to help people be comfortable and help them get uncomfortable and start making change in their lives. It's simple. I think decriminalizing hard drugs like that, you're absolutely correct. It makes it way easier for children to get their hands on that stuff. Way easier. And once they're doing that, I've been told it takes once for you to do meth, and you're done, like one time, right? Like, so why would you make that available to anybody ever? Right? It's like, get rid of the dealers and start doing some of the hard things that I think are going to have to happen, right, to combat that stuff. It's going to be tough and it's going to be uncomfortable, and the people that are, the addicts aren't going to have probably a lot of fun, until they're clean and sober, and we've helped them with their mental illnesses. Maybe those drugs should not be available to anybody at all. Take the dealers out, choke the supply, and put programs in place that can support the people.
Right. Yeah. No, that's profound what you say there. I'm going to ask one final question on that, and I'm going to kind of move this along. I know I've kind of, because this is, you can tell this is something that bugs me because I'm asking so many questions about it.
Yeah.
So I come from Nigeria, and
okay.
And where I'm from, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but where I'm from, there's a lot of shame attached to drug use. There's a lot of, and it's somewhat criminalized in the sense that if you're found with in possession of drugs, you will be arrested. While there are people who still get addicted to, I don't know, pharmaceuticals and stuff like that, it's not something that is open. Nobody is ever going to, well, I should preface that when I was growing up, now it's a very different it's a very different world now.
Yeah.
Right now it's different because it's in our music. It's yeah. Don't get me started. um, but do you think that as a country, because Canada is my adopted home now, as a country, are we too accepting? Because you spoke about like making drug use uncomfortable. Because one thing I know is you cannot make a person make a change in their life. You can try, but that person has to be ready. They have to be at that point where they go, okay, as you were, where they go, okay, this is the last one. And I would argue not everybody has cigarettes and alcohol stopped just like that the way you did. But even worse, you can imagine that amplified for drugs, for hard drugs, right?
Yeah.
Should we put back the shame into drug use? Like, we have a society now where drugs are glorified on, you can like listen to any song, right? Listen to any song, literally any song, right?
Yeah.
Drugs are glorified in our media so much. I like to give this example a lot when I have this discussion. Joe Rogan, for example.
Yeah.
You know, Joe Rogan would say give drugs to everybody. You know, and you know, so, I like the guy. I don't know why I always pick on him, but it's just funny every time he says that. But my point is that is putting the stigma and the shame back into drug use maybe a potential way of kind of getting people to rethink their relationship with drugs? Because for a lot of people, they're just like, for a lot of kids that start off doing drugs, it's like, I admit that a lot of it is based on like the mental challenges they're facing. But for a lot of people, I would say the vast majority of people, their first exposure was with friends. They were having a good time. You know, they saw how cool, you know, it looked. You know, it's just like how people started smoking cigarettes in the 80s, right? It was just because, you know, the musicians were doing it. It looks so cool, you know? It's like, so it's like, I know this is a long-winded question here, but does putting the shame and the stigma back into drugs, how do you assess that as a potential, as against like this free-for-all that we have now?
You know, cocaine and heroin and meth and whatever else, you know, they shouldn't be socially acceptable. Like when I was growing up through the electrical industry, you know, every conversation, it's like, hey man, you want to go? Let's go out and have a drink after work. Let's go for lunch and have a beer, right? It's socially expected, right? Or it was to consume alcohol, right? It was an expectation, and I think now we're at a point in society. It's part of our societal norm. You know, if you tell somebody, I think it's shifting a little bit now, but if you tell somebody, yeah, I don't know, I don't drink. Oh, why don't you drink?
What happened to you? You know, sorry.
What happened to you? Yeah, right. It's like, you're weird, man. You don't like to drink alcohol, and you know, but it's just become so part of our society and an expectation that you do it, right? Because everybody else is doing it, right?
Yeah.
I think that society has become more accepting of certain things that we in the past maybe would have never even considered accepting.
Right.
I think that would be a huge shift, you know, to change the level of acceptance that's already been created around drugs, hard drugs, right? That would be a huge shift.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would do that in your country. That, you know, that probably will never change. It's part of the culture, right? It just is, and you know, you don't accept it. The citizens there don't accept hard drug use. And judging by what you said, your comments, that there's nobody there advocating for the acceptance of it.
Right.
Right? There's no one standing up saying we should accept, hard drug use. Right? We should change our societal norm and change what we believe.
Right.
There's probably none of that going on, right? Whereas here it seems to be, the dreamers that have an idea on what they think is the right thing to do, right? And yeah. So if we could, make it a shameful thing in society, absolutely. That'd be amazing. Anything that would help dissuade people from even trying it in the first place. Just dissuade them the one time that matters, But I don't hold space that that's going to happen for us, right? No. It's as society. I guess it depends on which political party is in power as to how accepting we are of certain radical ideas. Our Liberal Party seems to be accepting of pretty much anything, right? Spend it, smoke it, snort it, right?
Yeah,
rack it up.
It's a free for all.
And that's a whole nother, hour and a half, 3-hour conversation.
Yeah. Politically, that in the world in general, there seems to be kind of a shift now towards a more conservative mindset, and I think that's the way the world kind of flows, right? We flow towards. It's a weird world in the sense that we flow towards from one extreme to the other, right? We go from no gays and all of that, and then we go, you know what?
Yeah.
Everything goes. You can be whatever you want.
Yeah. Okay. Cut your genitals off if you believe that's to be the truth, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
that's a long conversation, and I'd be curious to get your take on that. But I'm going to return to kind of business now. As you've got, we've talked about Renegade Electric, we've talked about Loadshare, we've talked about Stick Premium Cigars. That's a busy schedule, sir. So I want to kind of understand, like, your day-to-day managing 3 businesses.
So Renegade, my first business, I've always been hands-on in that company. Roll my sleeves up and get dirty, right? That's my style, and that's how I started the company. I have worked really hard to get the right people into my organization, and I don't care who owns a company. The people that make that company successful are the people that are underneath the owner, right? That are working for the owner. And again, I don't ever say, if somebody says I work for Mike, I always correct them and say, you work with me, right? You don't work for me, you work with me. And so I've been blessed on the Renegade side of the business to have some really good people that I've given some more responsibilities to. And so they've taken on those responsibilities. It frees up a ton of time for me to do some other things that I want to do. And so, and I'm continually looking for that, the solution to give me the liberty that I want, right? And so, it's the people. My Loadshare company, I hired a young lady, and she is super educated. She's, business and marketing. And she's driven to do well. And so I've basically given her the reins of that company, and she manages almost all of it. And we talk daily. We talk for probably a half an hour a day about challenges or just projects that are going on. We talk every day. So she takes a lot of the weight off of me as well. And we've got some systems that we've set up that are almost automated in that company. And then I've got the Stick Premium store that when we were a week away from signing the deal with the previous owners, we put an ad into Craigslist. looking for someone to come in and work the store with us, right? So like within a couple of days, we get a resume from a gentleman who has been in Canada for 3 weeks.
Oh, what?
3 weeks from Mexico. And when he was in Mexico, he managed a cigar store in Playa del Carmen for 5 years.
Wow.
And he's got his Cuban Habanos certification.
Wow.
So he's educated in Cuban cigars. And so, like, right away, like, holy, we hadn't even opened the store yet, I think, and we had a resume. And so, Miguel has been crucial in that, in the opening of that store. And I've had also support from my wife, from the beginning. She really stepped up and helped support setting everything up, right, and organizing everything and putting all the systems into place. My two partners in that business, they've stepped up to support as well. So, it's I think it's all the people that are involved in the organizations. They allow me to basically do three things at once, and I'm continually looking to create more liberty for myself, more time for myself, for whatever I want to do or with my family, right? So that process will continue until maybe someday that I'm not involved in day-to-day activities any longer. Right.
Yeah. So I thought I'd hit this quickly though, because you spoke about some of the personal development work that you did, mm-hmm. that you've done earlier, and I wanted to kind of what kind of personal development have you done to this point?
So we've my wife and I, it's funny, we had a really close friend of ours that invited us to an information session on one of the classes that the company put on. And so we listened to the presentation, and it was cool. It sounded neat. And my wife went one way in the room and I went the other way, and I was talking to somebody and she's doing this and that, and she comes back and she says, "Hey, I'm super excited." I said, "Well, what about?" She goes, "Well, I signed us up." I said, "What do you mean you signed me up?" Right? This is my girlfriend at the time. She's my girlfriend. "What do you mean you signed me up? What's wrong with me? I don't need any help. I'm good." Right? I went total resistance, right? Like, whoa. And so anyway, I committed to her that I would show up and participate. And so I did. And that was probably the absolute best decision I've ever made for myself in my whole life. Wow. That 4-day class that we did set me on a totally different direction in my life. We completed that class. A year later, we did another week-long class on a ranch down in California. And then we did another week in the same ranch, going over different classes anyway. And we went back down to the ranch for a couple of other times for some celebrations, and we've staffed some different things, helped with the companies. My wife is actually just opening up a personal development company in the Vancouver area right now. We jumped right in and did a bunch of work, and so like what I find with like my reaction, like, what's wrong with me, right? Oh my God, what are you trying to tell me, honey, right? And we always, every 2 to 5 years, we upgrade our cell phones, or we upgrade our laptops, we buy a new car, right? We go on a vacation, whatever. Like we're constantly upgrading things in our lives. And what I loved about the classes is we are a culmination of the experiences that we've had as humans, right? Mostly, from 19 years and younger, right? Those experiences tend to mold our subconscious into how we act and react, right? How we carry ourselves in our lives. Those classes are like upgrades. your subconscious and to the programs that run all of us in our lives, right? And so that's what I was getting at is that, that's an upgrade. And so it's like getting a new cell phone, buying a new car, right? You upgrade that programming in your mind, and it brings it up to current specs, let's say.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
And so that work is so important. I believe in it so strongly. If you came to me and said, "Hey, Mike, I'll give you $5 million, but I want you to give back everything you've created as a result of the development stuff that you've done in your life," not a chance.
Right.
Not a chance. I wouldn't take your money. I wouldn't give up I wouldn't give up what I've learned, what I've experienced, what I've created, whether it's business, family, friends, my physical transformation, like anything. I wouldn't give any of that back for a whole bunch of money.
Right. I think what I'll make my final question is, you've lived this. I would say, and I hope this is this does justice to how you feel, but you've lived this kind of fulfilling life where you've done a lot of personal growth, and you've also like followed your passions and done all these businesses. What do you look to in the next, obviously, 20 years or 30 years of your life and go, damn, that would be cool if I could do that?
Right now, I haven't looked 20 years ahead. Well, sorry, I guess I should say in 20 years, my main goal right now is to still be playing hockey. So in 20 years, I'll be 75, right?
Yeah.
I've told myself I'm going to play hockey until I'm 80. So right now, that's my main goal, is to be able to be physically fit enough and have the ability to play hockey at an old age.
Hopefully,
right?
You're not playing the smash NHL
No.
level.
No. Yeah, there's a little bit of yelling in once in a while, and people bang into each other, but nothing like that. I don't.
Right.
That's not the kind of hockey I want to play. But so that would be a long-term goal for me. I think that short-term being 5 to 10 years is I've done all of this stuff to create liberty for myself and my family, right? So that, at any point, on a Sunday afternoon, I say to my wife, "Hey, why don't we go to France tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And go hang out for a week, right? Or let's get on the boat and let's go away for 2 weeks out in the Gulf Islands, right? And go just hang out, or whatever that might be. But just to have the liberty to at the drop of a hat, get up and go. That's my long-term goal. That's my long-term vision, is to have that liberty. I still want to be involved. I'm not. I'll never retire. Right. I'll never. I think in what I've seen with a lot of old friends of mine is they've retired, and shortly after they've died, because they retire. They stop doing whatever they were doing. Right. I don't want to do that. I want to still be involved, but I want to have all the liberty that I need for my life and for my family. So that's really my, probably a 5 to 10 year goal, is to have that liberty to be able to just get up and go. And yeah.
What's your next big idea?
I really love fishing.
Oh, don't say
it. Fishing is another one of my passions. Like I am, we're boaters, right? My wife and I and my family.
Yeah.
You'll catch me out on my tender, fishing for salmon, fishing for prawns, with a cigar in my mouth, right? doing my two passions at the same time. And so, one of my dreams has always been to own a fishing lodge.
Right.
So who knows, right? Right now it's just a little thought in my mind, and all I need to do is plant the seed, and eventually that seed will grow. And so that would be, if it's like, you ask me I made it in the world question, that's it. If I can get a fishing lodge, I've made it, baby, right? And for me, that's the top thing, right? So.
All right. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for your time, Mike. And
Yeah.
I appreciate that I pulled you into a lot of wild directions in this conversation.
Yeah.
Some of them not so planned, but along the lines, when I have conversations with people, I like to kind of follow wherever the conversation leads. So thank you for your time today. For those of you at home, if you're not subscribed yet, if you're new around here, don't forget to subscribe down below. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Waterman, everybody.
Thanks, Victor. That was a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Wolf of Young Street podcast. If you derived value from this podcast, please don't forget to subscribe. I would love to hear from you as well, so please comment your thoughts down below.